Welcome to another episode of On the Move with the Caravan Sports Preview Show with Jim Powers. I am Zac McVey, filling in for Chris Miller. And Jim, let's go ahead. Let's get right into it. What do we have on the docket today?
We got a lot. And by the way, Zac, I'm glad you're doing the show with me this week. I needed a break from Miller, and he's
Right?
we've all got basketball stuff going on, but no, glad you're filling in this week. And yeah, we're gonna talk a little since we weren't able to get together last week because of all my stuff at the Norm Stewart, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We'll wrap up football season, and then we'll talk about the boys coaches poll that came out. We'll talk a little bit about the Norm Stewart and some interesting matchups over the weekend on the basketball side, since now we can finally start talking about basketball. And I'm not going to brag to say my JV team is undefeated with me coaching, but that's beside the point. But a lot of great things to dig into, my friend.
Well, I mean, with that being said, let's just kind of jump right into it as we close out fall sports. We had the Class 4, Class 5, and Class 6 football championships, and we'll just go right into Class 4. You had Kearney and Hillsboro, and Kearney was victorious with a score of 68-28. Jim, what were your thoughts on that ball game?
It was just a game that Hillsboro, they were playing with house money in some aspects. Kearney is such a well-rounded team, and they're really deep and they're really physical up front. Mm-hmm. And, they took it to Hillsboro. Hillsboro had the opportunities. They took their first drive down, couldn't score. Then they had another chance late in the second quarter to score again. And Kearney's defense just rose to the task. And, they've got such a great run game. And, Hillsboro was just really trying to find some different ways to stop it. But when you're that big and that physical up front, that speaks volumes. And it's not saying Hillsboro did anything wrong or, it was just, that day Kearney was the better team. And Hillsboro, Coach Saharsky's done such an unbelievable job with that crew. This senior class has just been terrific. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's still a bunch of young kids playing on that Hillsboro team. And they've got the experience now. Right. And that's going to speak volumes for them, next year in Class 4 once again. But a great showing by the Hawks, and actually talked to some of the parents after the game at the hotel. And yeah, they lost, but you know what? They were so incredibly proud of what the kids did to get to the state championship game. And they know, too, that this isn't going to be the first. And I agree. I think this is going to be the first of many opportunities that we're going to see Hillsboro, especially if they hang in there in Class 4, that they're going to make it to the state championship. And really proud of what they did. Like I said, they just ran into an absolute buzzsaw, out in Columbia with, that Kearney team. And that Kearney team, once again, was just – I had my doubts about them early in the year, but they got healthy at the right time, and that's pretty much what they were able to do against Hillsboro.
That's a lot. I mean, you talk about health, and going back, I guess, the day before with Park Hill Central, that winning the state title, getting healthy at the right time. But I mean, you look at Hillsboro's roster and you thought to yourself, okay, you have Division I athlete, Austin Romaine graduate. You have a couple other collegiate players, another running back, Patterson. He goes up to Truman State. So you didn't quite know, or at least maybe outside looking in, you thought, well, is Hillsboro going to take a step backwards? And I think for maybe all of the outside eyes, they were kind of shocked. I mean, not only Hillsboro didn't skip a beat. I mean, the brothers Brown, they were fantastic.
Yeah, without a doubt. No, and you're exactly right. When you lose an Austin Romaine, you lose Patterson, you lose some of those dudes up front. And we all had questions about them early in the year. Were they going to be able to do the things that they did? And honestly, and no disrespect to that group from last year, I think this group was a more well-rounded group. The Brown brothers, I mean, and you got to remember, one of them's back next year. I mean, right. That's the kicker with this whole thing. But I mean, it speaks volumes for what they were able to do and what, Bill and his coaching staff did, because not a lot of people gave them any credit or any love early in the year. I may have been one of the only ones because I knew what they had coming back. And,
right.
and, I had to fight in the early polls to get them, where they should have been. And then they just kept stacking win upon win upon win. They fall short against Ritter. but I think that helped them get through. And then they knocked off the number 2 team in the state, Lutheran North, in the state semi. And, once again, they got a taste of it now. And yes, it sucks losing, but that's just going to fuel the fire a little bit more, a little bit hotter for these off-season workouts, the things that they do in the summer, because once again, they've got a terrific core group coming back next year.
Exactly.
And they are going to be scary again next year. I promise you that.
They've got that stranglehold on the MAFC, definitely. So keeping into football, going into Class 5, you've got Cardinal Ritter and Republic out of the 3 large classifications had the highly contested game. Cardinal Ritter's victorious 38-25. I mean, not knowing that much about Republic and being in the St. Louis area, all you hear is about Cardinal Ritter. Jim, I mean, I see that score and I think, hey, they've got some ball players over there too in Republic. What all did you see?
I saw a Republic team that came out with, once again, you talking about playing with house money. You're playing the number 1 team in the state. You're talking about the defending Class 3 champ from last year. They pretty much brought everybody back. And in talking to the Republic coach, before the broadcast and everything, he said, hey, we're going to go out. We're going to play our game. And their game is pretty doggone good. Up front, they were big, and they are so fundamentally sound. And they were ripping off drives of 6, 7, 8 minutes, in ball control. But you know what? Ritter just does what they do. They run the ball extremely well. They set up the pass, and they're able to go over the top. And that's exactly what they did. I mean, there was one point, Zach, the time of possession was like 17 minutes to 4 minutes. And Ritter was up 2 touchdowns.
Right.
And that's just what they do. And, they were able, they got pushed. They got pushed to the edge in this one. And you've got to give a lot of, respect to what Republic did. But you know what Brendan Spain, and that's why he was named the Class 5 Coach of the Year by the Coaches Association, the job that he did to keep his kids focused and not lose sight of what was ahead of them was really, really impressive. And you know what? McKay's a great quarterback. They've got a great running game. They've got some great kids up front. And once again, they're capped out. They'll be back at 5 in Class 5 next year, and they've got a good young group coming back as well. So not going to be surprised if we'll see Ritter in the preseason poll as the number 1 team in 5. But, once again, they put on a great show. And other than the Valley Catholic game, that was the second best game of the weekend that I saw. And, the Valley Lamar game, we knew that was just going to be an absolute knockdown drag out. And sure enough, it was.
Right.
But, a lot of respect to Republic. In the year that those kids had, they got some terrific athletes. A young man that's going to Memphis. But Ritter just does what they do, and that's just win football games. And they're multifaceted. They did it with the run. They did it over the top. And congratulations to Coach Spain and that crew of back-to-back, and the rare back-to-back going from Class 3 to Class 5. You don't see that, and you used to never see that. But now with how the classifications go and all that stuff with the championship factor, you're going to see a little bit more of that. But, Cardinal Ritter just did a terrific job. They handled their business, even though they got pushed. And it was a fun game to call.
So I've got this question that I'll wait for after we talk about the last game, which was Class 6, Liberty North and CBC. But talk a little bit about that ball game. Liberty North came away with a 38-7 victory over the Cadets at Christian Brothers.
The bottom line was Liberty North was the better team. What they did over in the western part of the state this year, it was a battle between them and Lee Summit North for number 1 most of the year. They got pushed against Rockhurst to an overtime game in the semifinal. And they just came out and they let it go. I mean, this is a CBC team that has beat them the last 2 years, beat them in the championship 2 years ago, beat them in the state semi last year. And the mantra for Liberty North was, this is our time. And they left no doubt. And, as much as I wanted the St. Louis side to represent and win, you just got to call it as it is. And Liberty North was a way more physical team. They just took advantage of situations. They shut down McClellan. Every time McClellan, they put him out in the slot or they put him out on the edge, he was bracketed. He had
Mhm.
somebody in front of him and he had somebody over the top. And it just made it extremely difficult for him to get the football. And, the ending wasn't the way that anybody wanted to. And I really don't want to dive into
Mhm.
that. I'm just going to say that bottom line, CBC, terrific year. But Liberty North was the way, way better team in that Class 6 championship, and they deserved to win it. And I said when they expanded to 42 teams earlier in the year, whoever can get through the gauntlet of Class 6
Mhm.
is going to be the best team in the state. Liberty North was by far the best team in the state this year, and we saw that on display at Faroe Field a couple weeks ago.
And as we kind of put a bow on this football season, I mean, I can't help but look whether it's the St. Louis side, whether it's going to be the Kansas City side. You can go down to the SEMO area, you can go down to Southwest. It just seems like we talk about maybe the Jackson down in the SEMO area, and again, all of the different other state teams on the Kansas City side and Southwest side. There just seems to be a great crop of athletes. And so I'm going to put you on the spot here just because I heard, I guess, last week, I know that the DeSmet QB, I think he got offered at Mizzou. Let's just say this. Talk about the crop of athletes in state that with Mizzou season that they're having, they've got this top 10 ranking. How could maybe what are the players that you would say, hey, who could be an impact player like we've seen on this Mizzou roster this year going forward? Who is that possible next recruiting crop? Maybe skill player, O-line player. Just Jim, tell us about all the different athletes that we have in our state.
Oh, it's just unbelievable. But the unfortunate thing is, and this is, and I know we've had this discussion on the coaches box about NIL and the transfer portal and all that
Right.
stuff. I mean, I hate to say it, that is hurting the recruiting side on the high school level. A lot of these kids, I mean, a lot of college coaches, okay, they're going to hit the portal first,
Mm-hmm.
and then they got to kind of pick and choose now. Okay, we're going to go portal. We're going to see what our needs are. So who are we going to take the chance on? Are we going to take the chance on a young man that's already played a year or maybe 2 years on the
Mm-hmm.
collegiate level? Or are we going to go to a high school kid that we know is really talented and really good,
Mm-hmm.
but where do we put him into our grand scheme of things? And it's extremely tough. But with the way that Mizzou has played this year, and I think also, and I will say this, even though you still think that Pete is a better running back, and we've had that argument, we've dispelled that argument.
Upside, right?
You outside, you look at the big three for Mizzou this year.
Mm-hmm.
It was Brady Cook, it was Cody Schrader, it was Luther Burton. Where are those kids from? The St.
All
Louis area.
STL. Yep.
All STL. Okay, so that is waking up the recruiting side of things. It's kind of giving kids the opportunity to say, hey, maybe it's not so bad staying home. Now, is that going to stop the Ryan Days at Ohio State to come in? Is that going to stop, Nick Saban? Is that going to
Right.
stop, No, it's not. But at least the kids are now going to think about
Mm-hmm.
instead. And I hate to say it, I wish Mizzou success, because if they're successful, that means the high school football side is going to be really, really good, and everybody's going to be amped up. Drink is doing a terrific job.
Mm-hmm.
And what they've done this year is going to continue to help the recruiting side. I know one of the D linemen from Liberty North is going to Mizzou. Kid from
Summit, I
another
believe.
young man.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they're getting the pieces, and they're keeping the kids in state,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really cool to see. And that's exactly what Drink needs to do. He needs to be present. He needs to continue, making the jokes. And I mean, because kids like playing for coaches like that. And,
Right.
And like I said, I think the big thing is seeing the in-state, the success with the in-state kids from this past year. That's going to really carry over. And it's not going to surprise me if you see some kids flip in the next, remember the signing period kind of started, but then
Mhm.
there's that second signing period. There's still a little bit of time for some flipping to go on. Won't surprise me if we see that, especially if Mizzou wins the Cotton Bowl.
Right.
And, that's going to be a heck of a ball game with the Buckeyes.
Mhm.
If they can pull off the win in the Cotton Bowl, I think that's going to raise the eyebrows of a lot more people. And
Mhm.
you're already seeing some of the kickbacks that they're getting. Kids already, switching their commitments and all that.
Right. And that's the
Which
thing.
that's another story. That's another story for another day in my mind. I hate
Well,
that stuff.
and what's interesting though. I mean, you look at Mizzou, and you the talent again that the St. Louis area has, and really the entire state, and it's documented. It's documented not only in football, but it's also documented in basketball and baseball. But what's interesting to see is those kids that, hey, maybe out of high school they are going to other Power 5 schools in Notre Dame and Ohio State, what have you. Some are actually, again, because of transfer portal, they're coming back home. They're coming back, which is neat to see. And I'll throw out love to the Illinois side as well. It's really
Yeah.
neat to see on TV when you do see, hey, so and so from Cardinal Ritter, so and so from this area, this St. Louis school, and you get that name recognition on TV, and it's like, hey, it's something to be proud of.
I'm telling you, the border war is heating up. It really
Yeah.
truly is between Drake and between what Brett Bielema is doing over at Illinois.
Yeah.
And now it's turning into a dogfight between those two to steer the kids the right way and to get them to stay either here or and that's what you love. I remember,
Mhm.
when I first moved here, those days when there were
Right.
just, Pinkel would have to be in St. Louis 5 weeks out of the year
Yeah.
because he knew whoever at that time was coaching up at Illinois was
Mhm.
down here 5 times a year. And so it's really great to see that we're having that big recruiting battle once again between those two schools. And the local kids are really having a lot of fun in picking and choosing where they want to go, where they want to further their education and further their athletic career as well.
Exactly. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll switch gears here. We'll transition from fall sports into winter sports. So you are watching On the Move with the Caravan Sports Preview Show with Jim Powers.
Kiwi football team. We may be small, but we are
Mighty!
annoying. And you are so tired from playing defense against us that your focus is about to ride the bench. Go, go, go. Thanks, Mom.
Bye.
Come on, come on. And if you have cut rate car insurance, then not even a Hail Mary will save you from paying for this. So get Allstate and be better protected from mayhem, like me.
Mayhem is everywhere. Are you in good hands?
Are you tired of boring sports talk shows? Then tune into the Coach's Box. These guys don't just talk sports. They talk about whatever the heck they want to. Watch new episodes of the Coach's Box each week for free. Available only on our Facebook page and YouTube channel.
All right, we're back here, and we're going to continue on when we're talking about On the Move with the Caravan Sports Preview Show with Jim Powers. And Jim, as we come back from break, we said we're going to tease winter sports, and guess what? It is basketball time. Whether you're a fan of NBA, college, or high school, there is all kinds of basketball going around. And so, Jim, just tell us what's going on in the local scene.
It's going to be an insane high school basketball season. If the early season is any indication and any preview, we are in store for just an unbelievable year. Seeing some great teams already, seeing some teams that we don't normally hear a lot about, making some noise in the early season. And some of the early tournaments, and yeah, I think you've heard me say this. I always break the basketball season down into three segments. In late November, December, Christmas break, that's the silly season. That's when everybody's playing tournaments and you're trying to gauge and you're trying to figure out your rotations and your lineups. And then you hit January, the end of February, then you get into your conference play. You're playing for district seeding, you're playing for a conference championship. And then obviously we get the state playoffs that start, last week of February into
Right.
March, and then this year finishing up at Mizzou Arena. They're moving, everything will move out of Springfield up to Mizzou this year. 2 weekends, 4 days of basketball, because they're not going to use the old barn this year. They're going to keep everything over at the arena.
Really?
So yeah, so I mean, well, here's the main reason is
Uh-huh.
the arena floor is not a basketball court anymore, because right now at Hearns,
Uh-huh.
you've got the wrestling team and you've got the volleyball team.
Okay.
That's their home. So
Gotcha.
a couple before I went to Springfield, those couple years at Hearns, and I love the atmosphere at Hearns. I think Hearns Center for the Class 1, Class 2, and Class 3 is was an unbelievable environment. But they would have to tape the floor. And it just got to be too cumbersome.
Right.
And so when they made the move to come back to Mizzou, they all agreed that, hey, we're just going to add a day and play everything at Mizzou Arena. And I think
Gotcha.
it's a great decision. Yes, does it end? It adds an extra day, kind of splits things up a little bit, but that's okay. The kids will have the experience of a lifetime to play on Norm Stewart Court, to play in Mizzou Arena, and really, really enjoy it. And I remember the years that it was there before it went to Springfield.
Right.
And Springfield, hey, Great Southern Arena is just an unbelievable, and then Hammond Center is the other old barn, so to say.
Right.
The games in those two were just terrific over the last 5 years. But, everybody wanted to come back home to Columbia, and they were able to pull it off. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. But I'm telling you, I think we're going to see some great basketball this winter. Just what I've seen in the early season, it's going to be a lot of fun to follow.
Well, an extra day just simply means you get another opportunity of grabbing some Shakespeare's pizza. So that's never a bad thing. That's never a bad thing.
Or another day off of school for professional development.
There you go. But, and it's great. And we all know Southwest Missouri basketball culture. And we all understand that. To me as a fan, I like the fact that it's at the state school at Mizzou. It's centrally located, so those SEMO teams may not be driving 6, 7, 8, 9 hours. It's just a way that, hey, it's right in the middle, smack dab in the middle of the state. Everybody can go. Attendance, I think, going to be out of this world. The fact that they're adding an extra day, which is obviously news to me, being out of the game here this year. But
because you're not coaching this year.
No.
You and Kevin are the only two that aren't coaching now.
Right.
The three of the rest of us are.
Hey, I leave and it's sun. The sun's still out and it's nice. But so we talk about basketball. They have it's not a preseason poll. It's the December 11th. MBCA Boys Basketball poll came out, and I know several people had said, well, when's the preseason polls going to come out? When are we going to get this? When are we going to get that? So, Jim, just maybe fill us in a little bit, because things are slightly different than in years past, and I will say for the better. And
yes,
maybe you can elaborate on what I mean by that.
I hate preseason polls, and that. And honestly, that's why on the football side, we went away from the preseason poll.
Okay.
And honestly, I like how the coaches are doing it, and I wish we would do it on the media poll for football. They're waiting for a couple weeks to let the team settle in, to let them get some games under their belt. Because when you do a preseason poll, it's like you're throwing darts at a dartboard and you're just praying to get a bullseye.
A lot of it's from last year, right? A lot of it's from what did you do last year? Now, maybe they take into effect who you have coming back, but that's always tough to judge.
No, it absolutely is. That's why, I love what the Coaches Association is doing. I also love the new format that they're utilizing with a committee of voters from around the state. It's not every coach gets a vote now, and the way it used to be. Now it's a committee that every week will vote, and I think it streamlined it. I think it's going to give the media guys and the other coaches, it's going to give everybody a better gauge on the teams, because and I've said this on the coaches box, we would have some of these polls, and I would scratch my head like, wait a second, what is this team? I mean, what are we doing here?
Right.
And so I think in switching this and going with this direction, I love, once again, our colleague and our partner in crime here on Off the Rails Media, Chris Miller, is, he's really done a terrific job in streamlining this and making it better for everybody to kind of know exactly where the teams are. And the first boys poll came out earlier this week. The girls poll will come out next week.
On the 18th.
So it's going to, it's going to give everybody a really good gauge on where the teams are, because there's actually coaches that are watching it and looking at it and ranking it appropriately.
And I'm going to add to this line that is very specific in the actual poll. And it says each class has an 8-member panel of coaches from around the entire state that vote on a specific class. So again, it's not like, hey, you're a class 1 school and you're voting on class 6 or vice versa, and you have no clue who's involved. You're just, again, well, they look good because they have a good record, or hey, their big name recognition, so we'll go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt. So what's nice is that I think it's concise, it's consolidated by each classification, and the member representatives, I think, reached out to get that panel of coaches. And so I think, again, which we all want as fans, we all want some type of validity to the polls. Now, obviously, it's not going to make everybody happy, and you can't please everybody just due to the circumstances. But I think what the Coaches Association is doing is that they've heard, and they are trying to adapt and make some modifications. And to me, so far, it looks good. So, I mean, looking at that poll, Jim, if you've got it, what kind of sticks out to you on some of these rankings?
Well, I mean, obviously, and you go to Class 1, South Iron should be the number 1 team, and I'm sorry, they're the number 1 team until somebody can knock them off in consecutive games. I had a chance to see them this past weekend at Norm, and they looked as good as they did last year. Dusty Dankins has got a great group of kids that are returning from, the back-to-back state championships. You go over to Class 2, you got some of the usual suspects in Salisbury and Hartville hanging out there. Then you start getting into some of the local teams, and you go to, Class 3, New Madrid County. I mean, that team was loaded last year. This team is really, really good this year again. And then, Charleston's hanging around in there, Lafayette County team that fell just short last year. And then in Class 4, it's Vashon's world. Everybody lives in it. But I'm telling you, and I saw Vashon play this past weekend. They lost in overtime to a really, really, really good team. Them and Father Tolton are going to have a battle.
Right.
If everything shakes out the way it should. Tolton, we just saw that the Rowe kid, verbaled over to Mizzou. He is as legit as you're going to see. But Vashon's got kids that can just get up and down the court. I had a chance to see Tolton play as well this weekend. And then you get to some of the local teams, Principia, in the bottom part at number 9. You've got Kip Academy and John Burroughs getting some votes, as well.
How about even Park Hill Central? I mean, they just win the Class 3 football state championship, and they're right back at it. They're ranked number 5 in Class 4, and they turn around. They don't skip a beat, and they win the Gene Steichhorst tournament out in Hillsboro. So they go right from football right into basketball. A lot of it's the same group of seniors. You talk about an athletic group, so it's nice to see them ranked as well.
Oh, without a doubt. And I had a chance to see them play at the Norm Stewart and was really impressed with them. Then Class 5, you got all the usual suspects. You've got Sykeston, who is Sykeston. St. Mary's Southside Academy. The show that Zaire Collins put on at Webster Groves last week. I wish I could have seen it in person, but everybody I talked to said this kid is phenomenal. And for those, SLU fans, yes, it is Yuri's little brother, and he is just as good, if not better, than Yuri. Vianney, is there, tied with Webster Groves for 3. You've got Ladue, who's off to a really, really great start. Westminster, who I'll get a chance to see tomorrow night over at Lutheran South. They're ranked there. And then Class 6 is an absolute crapshoot. Ritter moving up. Haven't seen them play yet, but they're off to a great start. Chaminade had a chance to see them play in the nightcap out at the Norm. They lost to a really, really talented team, but, they're going to be just fine. CBC is going to be good under new first-year head coach Sam Briscoe. You got a Lindbergh team. When's the last time we've seen a Lindbergh team ranked in the top 10 on the boys' side? It's been a bit. And then you look down, Timberland is in the mix. A Hickman team, and I'm just going to say this, that Hickman team should be in the top 10. If I've got one thing that I'm going to nitpick about, I watched Hickman play. Cray Logan, has a group. And when you see their 6'8" monster, and he's a junior, and he is as good of a player that I've seen, coming out of the Columbia area in an awfully long time. And I'm rolling even the Tolton kids in there. This kid is really, really talented. Rockbridge is in the mix. You got Francis Howell that's also getting votes, and Troy Buchanan also getting votes. So, it's really a great mixture, teams from all around the state. But I'm telling you right now, Class 6, I saw Oak Park, I saw North Kansas City. Those two teams are for real. And you can't, Staley is a team that everybody better keep their eye on as well. Chris Neff always does a great job. And trust me, if they can get through the gauntlet out in the western part of the state and, shake the trees a little bit, don't be surprised if you see Staley, creeping in there. But also, you've got a DeSmet team that you better keep your eyes on. I love what Kent Williams is doing. He's got a lot of those football players that are playing basketball for them. They're going to kick. They've already got a couple nice wins, on the road down in Springfield last week. So I think it's going to be a really interesting setup with how this is all going to go, especially with the polls. And then on the girls' side, we'll see. We'll get to see that first poll on Monday. But Incarnate Word just doing Incarnate Word things, and that's just basketball games. They start the season off 4-0. They get 2 nice wins out in Utah over the weekend, and they're ranked in both the Max Preps and the ESPN Top 25. And Dan Rolfus has another really, 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 really good team. They'll be the number 1 seed at the Viz here in a couple weeks. That seeding will come out on Sunday. They'll be right there with John Burroughs. Those two teams are just really, really stacked and loaded this year. So it'll be really interesting to see the girls' side of things, what shakes out with that.
Right. Well, you brought up the Norm Stewart Classic. Tell us a little bit about. I mean, you were bringing up all these teams and all these games. I mean, give us kind of a synopsis, if you will, on that weekend.
How about 26 games in 3 days?
Wow.
Yeah, it was terrific, and it was a lot of fun. I've been a part of the Classic since its inception, and this year they changed the format. They didn't do the overnights, which for the old guy and me, I was very happy about. But they bring in great teams, and they bring this Kankakee team out of Illinois who beat Chaminade is really, really good. They brought Olathe West in, who's another really good team. And then a lot of the great teams from around the state, and it's a great mixture. It's all classifications. Park Hill Central, their boys and girls both played in it and played extremely well on Thursday night to kick things off. But the big thing is, and what this is all about is it's raising money for Coaches versus Cancer. All the proceeds go to the American Cancer Society, and it was great to see Norm Stewart there. In the last couple of years, this is the most I've seen Norm at the games. I mean, heck, Saturday night, he was still sitting there at 9:30. I'm sitting, I look over my shoulder, Norm's still sitting there. I'm like, wait a second. I should be in bed right now, and Norm's still sitting here watching basketball.
Got a basketball fix he needs to get.
But it was so great. And, the kids, they'd get done playing. If they saw Norm over there, they would go over and either fist bump him, shake his hand. I know Jay Blossom after the Prin game, he asked Norm if he would come out into the hallway and talk to his kids for a minute. Norm
Uh-huh.
spent 15 minutes with those kids. I mean,
That's
it was so cool to see that, and it was so cool for the interaction. But I think the biggest piece of it is the money that is generated all goes to Coaches versus Cancer and the American Cancer Society, and that's what this event's all about. And this is why I drop whenever I get the dates, it's blocked off because it's something that's near and dear to my heart.
right.
And it's near and dear to everybody. We've all
Yep.
have somebody that has been affected by cancer. And
Exactly.
whenever Norm Stewart says to me at the end of the whole thing, he looks at me and says, "You're going to be back next year." Am I going to tell Norm Stewart no? Absolutely not. Yes, Coach,
Yeah.
I will be back next year.
Right.
So,
Right.
but it was a great event. It was just a lot of great teams and really a celebration of some great basketball, not only around the state of Missouri, but here in the Midwest.
That's great. You talk about being able to showcase talent again. I mean, we could talk about all of the different, just on the St. Louis side of things, all the different athletes that is currently
Mhm.
playing in the NBA, but over historically, we've talked about it on the show as well, on the Coach's Box, about just the talent that not only the St. Louis area has, but the entire state of Missouri when it comes to not only football, but basketball, as we're talking. And so talk to us a little bit, that's the past. Talk to us about the future on some of these, whether it's teams you want to talk about, maybe there's some games coming up, players to watch. Just fill us in, give us kind of
Yeah.
your take, your hot take on what's going on coming up.
I've already given a hot take. This is going to be a great year. I mean, let's just put it out there. But no,
Yeah.
I mean, games this week. There's some really good games this weekend. And, MCC is just going to be a knockdown drag out this year. You got 5 teams, 10 games, or 8 games. My gosh, I don't know who's going to win the MCC this year. You talk about Vianney, Chaminade, CBC, DeSmet, SLU High. Clags has got another really, really talented group coming back. So that's going to be the conference to watch, and that they start their conference tomorrow night, and Chaminade
Really?
at
It's
CBC.
that early?
Oh yeah, they're rolling out. They play their first conference game tomorrow night.
Now, what is that?
So
Just due to everybody's schedule, everybody's
it's the
traveling
way they
for
schedule it. It's scheduling and giving them opportunity to play.
Okay.
And some of these great, like most of these teams in the MCC are going to play in the Coaches versus Cancer at Maryville over break.
Okay.
So they throw, I believe it's 2 conference games in December, and then they backload everything else. And that's so. But yeah, Chaminade at CBC tomorrow night. That is just going to be a knockdown drag out. Then Windsor and Hillsborough. And I'm going to tell you right now, Windsor and Hillsborough, they've had some great matchups over the last couple of years.
Yes.
And for them to get at it early in the GCAA season,
Right.
that's going to be a terrific matchup over at Hillsborough.
I've had the opportunity of getting my butt kicked by what would be now their juniors and seniors of both of those teams, and I can tell you with certainty that they are loaded. They are loaded.
Yes.
And so that is going to be a good showcase of talent in the Jefferson County area for sure.
Especially early season. I mean, you look, that's a great early season matchup between those two that have made some noise over the last couple of years in the district.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the girls' side, Pius playing in the Sullivan tournament, which is a really, really good tournament.
Right.
They've got a chance to play in the championship on Saturday. And, the Pius girls are playing some great basketball. They lost in the championship game to Lutheran South at the Herky tournament last week. But, still, what Portel's doing with that group, with Krodinger and that whole bunch, they're going to make a lot of noise, this year. And honestly, they are the odds on in the JCAA, their section of the conference. And I like where they're at district wise.
Mm-hmm.
I think they can, if Aaron can keep them healthy, and that's me and you both know it. It's an awfully long basketball season. You've got to keep your kids healthy. If you can keep them healthy, I think they can make a pretty decent run. But that's one of the highlight games. if they can get through the semi and then get into the championship, to win that Sullivan tournament, that's a pretty good early season get for them coming off the Hillsborough tournament, which they played well. And really, Lutheran South kind of took them out of their game a little bit in the third quarter. But this is a really talented Pius team, and Lutheran South was pretty. I can say it because I'm on that coaching staff.
A tale of two teams. Tale of two teams. You've got
really
one that's going to be shorter and use their speed, and then a Lutheran South team that, I mean, they're trees up there. They're 5'11", 6 foot, 6'1", and
it can shoot the rock a little bit.
It can shoot a little bit. I mean, and so Ben's doing just continue to do some really good things out at Luso, and I mean, there's talent all across the board. On the boys and girls side. Yeah,
no doubt about it. And we'll start digging into next week. We'll have the girls poll, talk about some of these games. We'll have the Viz tournament seedings. I know we'll have I know a lot of the teams down in Jeffco are playing down at Park Hill Central over Christmas, so we'll have that bracket as well. So we'll preview a lot of that stuff next week. Is now football's over, finally. Let's talk about basketball.
Well, that always brings up, and we talk about it on the show, and we can maybe close with this here, just because you see it on the message boards, you hear people talking about it. What would it take? Is it a good idea? But what would it take to try and bump the football season up a week, if not
it's going to
at least eventually. 1 week?
It's going to happen, and I really believe that. And, we were having some big discussions this past weekend out at the Norm Stewart. The football coaches want the championships to go back to Thanksgiving weekend. It's just now it turns into a logistical puzzle because, unfortunately, if that happens, you can't play your championship game at Furrow Field every year. Okay? So – in talking to Dr. Ruckstead, at halftime of the Class 6 game, they've committed him to Mizzou for next year.
Okay.
But I think the reason that they're holding off is because I think the push is going to be big enough to where they're going to restructure football and play all the championships on Thanksgiving weekend. And that's why they're moving the 8-man game up to the St. Joe area. Okay. They've got a couple site visits that they're going to do up there. But no, I think the push is there. It's just what it's going to boil down to is, are we going to play a 9-week regular season and then start week 10 and then shuffle the schedule back a week to start practices in July? Or are they going to play an 8-game regular season, week 9 is first week of district? That's where there's going to have to be give and take between both the coaches advisory committee and the mission board. I agree with you.
Yeah, you could still do it. And again, this is my 2 cents for the people that ever tune in or care about. I go back to you're gonna the cream's always gonna rise to the top. And if they're gonna keep those points the way they are, they're gonna keep the math the way it is. If you're gonna have 8-team districts again, like they have been, which is fine, then you know what? Number 7 and number 8, thank you for playing. Get your week 10 game against each other, because I would be willing to bet they would rather play each other with a chance to win to start next year on a positive note versus going in and saying, hey, we got to play. Hey, man, we got to play the number 1 team in our district and a chance, and I think that alleviates a lot of the stuff that we've seen over the years with the forfeits and the big scores. And everybody's happy. Everybody's happy.
No, so. I agree. I agree. It's just going to be real interesting. I would love to be a fly in the room when those conversations happen. But
somebody should stream it.
They should stream it. But I really believe we are going to see football going back to Thanksgiving in the near future. And I think that's going to make everybody happy, because I know the basketball coaches, especially the smaller schools, they hate not having their football players until the second week of December. Right. And, it hurts the kids because, you really like to have a couple days. Scheduling will make it easier. So I think it's going to happen. It's going to be a matter of when. And I think that's why Misha held off on doing a long-term deal for football They just did a 1-year deal, and then we're going to see what happens, because I think they know too that everybody is pushing to go back to championship weekend on Thanksgiving weekend.
I like that. Well, Jim, I thank you for having me on, filling in for Chris Miller.
No, thank you, brother.
It's always great to talk sports with you. I mean, you're around the area, and I mean, you do such a great job with just everything that, whether it's on TV or whether it's at the state. I mean, you've got your pulse on high school athletics, which is great to see. And we always appreciate you, just being able to hang out with some local coaches that like to goof off and have a good time.
All I know is we're still trying to figure out where we're watching Mizzou, Ohio State. That's all I'm saying is we still got to figure that piece out. So, but no, it's great to have you filling in, and we'll be back with the Coaches Box next week, and at a site to be determined. We don't know where we're doing it yet. We're going to do it someplace. We're going to do it live. We just don't know where yet.
Yep. All right. So for Jim Powers, I'm Zac McVey, and thanks for watching another episode of On the Move with the Caravan Sports Preview Show with Jim Powers. Take care.
This episode of On the Move with the Caravan is brought to you by Off the Rails Media. Life's more fun when you're off the rails.
Are you tired of boring sports talk shows? Then tune into the Coaches Box. These guys don't just talk sports. They talk about whatever the heck they want to. Watch new episodes of the Coaches Box each week for free. Available only on our Facebook page and YouTube channel.